I'm down. So
Yeah, hell yeah.
Kiera, welcome in.
Thank you
It's
for having
awesome
me.
awesome to finally meet you. I feel like we've known each other
We
for a while, but
were
not properly.
Yeah, we've had the same friends. We've been in, like, the
Mm,
same, like, communities, but I don't think we've ever really talked or played
no.
with each other game too much, which is kinda
Mm,
funny.
It's interesting
I
that
see
sorry, go on.
I see you making all this content, I'm just like, "Man, I would love to be a part of this," and I just never reached out.
Yeah. I feel like that's the way it goes with content though, right? So many people just don't want to be the first person to reach out.
Mhm. Also time zones, to be fair.
Time zones do suck. It is like 8 a.m. for me right now and like 1:30 in the morning for you. So
1:30 in the morning for me, yeah.
I appreciate you taking the time to come on, but I'm really happy you reached out because I would say I've seen you like it's one of those things I've seen you tweet in and all this kind of stuff like similar to how I
Yeah.
tweet and talk. So it's really interesting to get in and finally talk to you. So why don't you tell us a bit about yourself? I think that'd be a good way to start.
Yeah, for sure. Well, my name's Kiera. Usually online, my alias is Burning. Don't even know where that came from. I think I was like 9 years old. I think like it first started off as Burning Trees, and I did end up shortening a little bit.
Hmm.
But I'm from Canada. I recently graduated school to become a paramedic. But right
Awesome.
now I'm working with search and rescue, and I'm also a sous chef. I heard you were a chef.
No
Aren't you a
way!
cook?
I forgot you were a chef. Oh damn,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm just starting to open up a restaurant May 1st.
Well, you are.
Yep. So
No way.
I'm like kind of like co-running it. Last
Okay.
year was our first season and I
Hmm.
was just shift lead, but now I got promoted to sous chef and I'm
Congrats.
hiring some people now and getting up in the big leagues.
Mate, that's awesome. What kind of restaurant is it?
It's it sounds funny, but it's a gourmet hot dog stand.
Awesome. I
It's
love
called the
that.
it's called the Doghouse, but the people
What a
who,
name.
like, invested into us is a meat market, so we make all our own meat,
Oh,
all handmade meat.
perfect. That's
So
perfect.
yeah,
And no
it's like
processed stuff.
no, no, it's like our own kind of spice mix, we smoke it ourselves, everything.
Oh, wow.
It's top notch.
Oh, that's so cool, man. Tell you what, there's one thing that's like a market that's missing here in the UK is like good hot dogs. I feel like they're always so crap, unless you go to like a local butcher's or something.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, they're horrible.
Oh, mate, that's awesome. So it's gonna be like
So
an
out
actual sit-down
here
restaurant.
yeah, yeah, so we don't right now we're, getting a building permit to make a porch.
Mhm,
We gotta buy some stalls and we're, looking to, like, get a patio. This is the right word for more seating. Cause
mhm.
last year there was, like it was so busy, we had just no seating. It was so crammed, so now we're getting a patio built up.
That's so cool, man. How long you been chefing for or cooking for?
Oh, I think actually a year ago, which a year ago was my first, cook job. I was just a line cook, and
Mhm.
then, like, my good buddy is the chef of the restaurant, so he offered me the shift lead role.
Mate, that's awesome.
Yeah. Brand new in the cooking industry, a year in, and
And just
I'm a sous
launch it into
chef.
it.
Yep, I just went right in.
That's how it goes sometimes though. I've just finished I don't know if you're familiar with Anthony Bourdain at all.
I'm not.
No, he was an American chef. He was famous for like travel and like culture and food. I just listened to his audiobook, Kitchen Confidential, and it's basically just him telling the story of how he became a line cook and just the absolute abuse of like the kitchen trade in like the 80s and 90s.
I feel like someone mentioned that to me, and
It's a really
I was
interesting.
supposed to look into it, and I never did. I
Yeah.
don't even know who mentioned it.
Honestly, I recommend if you're into like kitchen culture and things like that, it is a really fascinating listen to see how it was compared to I don't know how about over
Yeah.
in Canada it is, but like here it's a lot less toxic
Oh,
than
yeah.
it used to
See,
be.
the only thing I know is from, the show The Bear, and I'm about 2 episodes in, so
Great show.
I
Great
don't
show.
okay. It seems really good, but I'm literally only, like, 2
I need
episodes
to watch the new season of that. I think I've just started season 2. They do it really
in.
well though.
They do, like, so far, the episodes I'm like, wow, there's a lot of, like, kitchen lingo, and it's, like, it's very
Yeah,
accurate from what I
very, very accurate. Yeah. Oh, mate, that'd be so cool. Do you have like an opening date yet for that, or obviously still just waiting for the
May
plans?
1st.
May
May
1st.
1st. That's what we're hoping for, and then we'll close down October 1st because it's an open air kitchen.
Okay.
So, we're not closed off, so we can't really work year round. It's freaking cold here. But,
Yeah, I
it's
can
not like we
imagine.
want to work year round. So it's gonna be open May 1st to October 1st.
Okay. Your microphone's just cutting out a little bit. You might need to put a
Oh
little bit
yeah,
closer
no
to your face.
worries.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, perfect. May 1st. That'll be cool. What? Yeah.
Yeah.
Open air kitchen though, like.
I'm not gonna lie, I need to get like that into my head that it's open air because I would be saying the most crazy stuff and they just
Yeah.
bounce off the walls in the back. And I'm telling you, my boss has gotten so many phone calls where I need to like watch my language or I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know, like said something and it like ticked somebody off.
Yeah, yeah. So my current job, I work in between two places. I run a catering unit one side, but then I also work in the cafe side sometimes as well. And the cafe's got an open kitchen, so like you can see straight through the pass. And sometimes towards the end of the day, we're cleaning down, music's playing, and we're kind of just like shouting and swearing. And then like the front of the house, we'd be like, "Guys, we still got customers. Like, you need to be quiet."
Oh yeah,
It's like, "Oh shit,
absolutely.
my bad."
See, lucky for us, we just blast music all day long. Like you can even
Nice.
barely hear the customers, but it's definitely the
That's part of the
foul
vibe,
mouth
though.
part I kind of need to work on.
Yeah.
When you're with your best buddies, you really just get into it.
Yeah,
It's like, oh
exactly.
man, there's customers.
Yeah, you just vibe and you're trying to have a good time. You're trying to like, especially in that kind of environment as well. But
Exactly.
oh mate, that'd be so cool. The doghouse. That's a great name.
It is, and hey, you know what? We allow dogs in the restaurant too. So
There you go, guys. If you ever, I don't know whereabouts in Canada, if you want to disclose, but you should definitely go check it out.
BC, yeah, I'm in the Kootenays. So you ever find yourself in the
Kootenays,
Kootenays?
the Kootenays. That I have no idea what that is. Is that West Coast
I think it's Yeah, it's West
ish?
Coast. So it's in
I'll
British
take that.
Columbia, which is on the West Coast, and it's kind of like southern BC in the
Right.
middle.
Okay. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I in my head, Canada is always just like Toronto, Ontario, maybe
See, this is
Vancouver.
nothing. This is like nothing. Like I live in a small town of 1,000 people. Like
Oh
I'm just
wow.
surrounded by mountains, like right on the lake.
Oh,
It's beautiful out here.
I
I
bet
should
it's
send you some
stunning.
photos sometime. It is
Yeah, please do.
gorgeous.
Yeah. Oh,
Gorgeous.
it must be hard being around like so few people,
Um,
or not.
Somewhat. See, I moved here from a city. I
Right.
moved here from a city called, Edmonton, big
I've heard
city.
of that.
I don't know the population. Okay,
I've
perfect.
heard of
So
Edmonton.
that's like yeah, so that's the capital of, Alberta.
Mhm.
And so I moved from there because I actually didn't like the city. There's just too
Oh,
many people for me, you know what I mean? I
yeah.
get very, like, anxious in public spaces sometimes, and,
Mhm.
when people become too much, it's honestly like a nice escape coming out here.
Yeah, I can imagine. I think I found that with like as I've got older, that I enjoy my alone time way more. I've always been a bit of an introvert, but I'm kind of like an introverted extrovert. So like once I'm out, I'm happy and I'm chilling. But I think the more like the older I get, the more I just enjoy being in like nature and on my own and just chilling.
Yeah, for me, I'm definitely a homebody. Maybe when I was in like middle school, I kind of went a little crazy. I was very extroverted. I had no insecurities. I was so out there. And then I kind of like high school hit, and then it was just like total opposite.
Yeah.
I just preferred staying home. I didn't really hang out with people much, and I kind of been that way for a while now. I kind of prefer it. I like my little
Mhm.
online gaming buddies.
Yeah, yeah, I feel that. I feel like I rarely talk to like my IRL friends. Like I love my IRL friends. They're great, but a lot of them are into things I'm not. They drink like whenever they're meeting up, they're always out drinking, and I'm not a big drinker, so it's just
I get that because I don't drink or smoke either. Like the most I
no.
have to drink is like a beer.
Mhm.
That's about it.
Yeah.
You won't really see me tipsy. You won't see me like drunk.
Mhm.
And So it kind of makes me feel like excluded a little bit too, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, 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 I
It's hard
feel
to
that.
match the same energy.
Yeah, I know some people say, "Oh, you don't need to drink to have a good time." And it's like when everyone around you is drunk, it's I don't know, for me, I'm just like, yeah, I don't really wanna be around that if unless I'm drunk myself. I don't know. That might just be me. But, what I do wanna do, I wanna get into it because your
Yeah,
story is fascinating. Like, I found it so interesting that, well, I'll let you take the reins, but to set it up, you are diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder.
correct.
It's I feel like that's quite a rare diagnosis for people to actually get. It's a term and a label that gets thrown
It's
around very easily.
very easily. The thing is, being diagnosed with it wise, it's very, very hard to get diagnosed with it
I
because
can
it
imagine.
kind of like it is a huge spectrum. Like
Mm,
you can have narcissistic traits, you can be, have NPD but have no idea. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people who have
mhm.
NPD don't know and they don't even get diagnosed because they have no idea. They just think that everything's okay.
Yeah.
And for me, it's funny because the way I got diagnosed was I grew up so I was diagnosed with ODD when I was 10 years old, so
Mhm.
oppositional defiant disorder.
What's
And
that?
so um
ODD?
yeah, oppositional defiant disorder, basically what it is having problems with authority, pretty much.
Right.
So when someone acted like better than me or above me, I got so angry. And being a
Ah,
teenager and or like I got diagnosed when I was like 9. So being a kid and growing up, it was like very, very hard to deal with those emotions.
yeah.
And so teachers, parents, anybody, I just would not listen to. Like I grew up like having horrible relationships with teachers. I would get suspended from so many schools just because I would talk back.
Mhm.
If someone tried to put me in my place, I would be like, hell no.
Yeah.
And so it was really just a thing where I was just angry constantly. You're a kid, so people try and guide you, and I
Mhm.
just be guided.
Do you think did people ever just kind of put that down to, "Oh, you were just misbehaving, you were just a naughty child," like
Yes, actually, for the most part, that is what people would think, but it was very, very extreme for me.
Mhm.
Like I would get physical. Like I
Oh, wow.
remember it was very, very little things. I remember like my brother would try and put on a TV show, even though I had one on, and I would lose my mind. Like I would try and grab him and throw him to the ground. And there have been times where I was, 9 years old, and I'd grab a knife and, like, threaten
Oh.
him with it.
Oh,
So,
shit.
it was very, very, like I got consumed by anger. You know how people say,
Yeah.
you, like, black out?
Yeah.
That's kind of how it was. I was, like,
Wow.
consumed with anger over the littlest things. Like, even, like, any kind of authority, even as simple as, like, my brother putting on a TV show that I didn't want. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It just
Wow.
so, so angry.
That's
And
incredible. Like, not
yeah.
incredible, like, the sense, but, like, it's so super interesting, like, it's so even if it must have been so difficult growing up, like, anytime someone even if just taking the trash out or things like that, would that
Yeah.
trigger it
It
and it could
was
just
like I
spark up like
yes,
that?
exactly. My parents would tell me to make my bed, and I would cry out of anger. They tell me to put the sheets on my bed, and I would just lose it. To do my laundry, I would lose it.
Mhm.
And it was tough because I had no idea what was going on too, and I was going through like puberty and hormones, and
Just
it
that
just makes you
mix of
like
everything.
spiral.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so basically, I've had therapists and psychologists since I was 6 years old. So
Wow. It's
I
young.
yeah, that is young, you know? And so when it comes with me getting diagnosed with NPD, kind of how that started was the ODD. So I
Right.
always knew there was like kind of something wrong. I was always had psychologists, always had therapists. And the thing is, a lot of therapists actually like gave up on me
Mhm.
because I refused to get any help.
Right.
And so how that switched up, funny enough, was I was put on a wait list to see a psychologist, so I didn't have to pay for it. I was
Mhm.
16, and I wouldn't have been able to see a psychologist till I was 18. Um, But then when I turned 18, I was like, at that point, I was really, really into mental health, really into psychology and mental disorders. And
Mhm.
every single time NPD popped up, it kind of like,
Right.
I felt very like connected to it in a way. I was like, I don't
Ah.
want to be someone who self diagnoses, but
Mhm.
this is me. Literally. I mean, like, uh, I feel very connected to this. And so
Yeah.
I ended up paying for my own psychologist, which was like 3 grand. And
Oof.
the thing is, I paid for that just to prove I was right about it.
Wow.
So 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 at the start, it wasn't even about getting help. It was just,
Mhm.
I wanna be right. I think I have this, so
Wow.
I'm gonna pay this much money just to hear this guy say that I was right. And it was a
Right.
long process. I mean, it took 9 months. It was like 5 clinical interviews, like 5 different, like, tests and, like,
That
family history,
rigorous.
medical history, everything.
Oh,
It was a lot. And
damn.
yeah, and I did feel actually pretty like then I read the report and everything, like, kinda changed because
Right.
this guy, he just knew me 100%. Like, I thought I could mask and he wouldn't see past it. Oh, man.
Right.
Oh, man, he saw past it.
Read you like a book.
So, yeah, read me like a book, which kind of was like, "Whoa, okay, hold on."
Mhm.
And so, it was very, very interesting to read all that and how
Yeah.
someone perceives me, and, what really clicked is he everything behind, like, my NPD was all insecurity,
Right.
which some people don't actually, realize. The NPD is one of the most shame-based disorders.
Yeah.
And that's why a part of me also slightly didn't think I had NPD because, I was very insecure, and all you see is that people who have NPD, people who are narcissists, are just full of themselves. No
Yeah.
shame, no regret. They are like, you know,
Yeah, I
and
think that's one of the misconceptions, right? They're just selfish.
yeah,
It's all about themselves, and I think
and it's tough because honestly, a lot of them are.
yeah.
It depends because you could have traits, and when you're
Yeah.
someone with just the traits, I do believe those traits are just a sense of superiority. you
Mhm.
know you fully believe you're better than everyone else.
Yeah.
Like, when I was in middle school, when I was very, very extroverted, I thought I was better than everyone else,
Mhm.
100%. Like, there was no insecurities, there was no doubt, there was nothing. And I can see how narcissists who are like that are selfish.
Mhm.
I did everything for myself. I had no regard for people's feelings. I was a bully. you know
Mhm.
and I can see how some people who have those traits are definitely selfish. I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard. It's a double-edged sword.
100%. I think yeah, because it's such a it's one of those disorders where everyone knows it, but I would say maybe 1% of the population actually know what it is.
100%.
And
It's
sorry, go on.
it's like no, I agree with you because it's become mainstream. It's become like
Yeah.
a hot word, calling your toxic ex a narcissist or
Yeah.
calling your abuser a narcissist. It's become super mainstream, but
Mhm.
not in the way it should.
No.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of things will get thrown around, especially in the last, like, couple of years, like autism and ADHD gets thrown around all the time.
Oh yeah.
But then that actually helps raise awareness for autism and ADHD and can somehow almost better the research or whatever it is going into it. But I don't feel like narcissism will get the same treatment.
No, it definitely doesn't. People now that has become so mainstream just use it to label someone who they view as a bad person.
Yeah,
And that makes honestly getting help so much harder.
I can imagine.
I've been in therapy for a long time, but finding a therapist for helping me with my coping with NPD is so hard. I will look up, therapist for narcissistic personality disorder, and all it will be is therapy for people who are abused by narcissists.
Really?
Yeah. I
Interesting.
spent hours trying to find someone, and I would call people and they would be like, "Normally we just work with people who were victims of narcissists."
Mhm.
I was just like, "Well, your website says that you specialize in NPD." And they're like, "Yeah, victims." And I'm like, it's hard. It's really hard.
Wow.
You know, it's difficult to get help, and
Mhm.
with it being such like it's a complicated disorder, and you think there'd be more research on it, more people trying to
Yeah.
help, especially if it's labeled as abusive or
Mhm.
people with narcissistic personality disorder are evil. You think there'd be more help for them.
Yeah. It's something that I don't think anyone thinks about. Like, unless you
Mhm.
are diagnosed or a loved one is
Mhm.
diagnosed, I don't think anyone really knows because it is just the victims of, like, and that it really is just, like, eye-opening to me, like, that's it's you don't think of how difficult it must be for the person with MPD to actually
Mhm.
get the help. They just think of how they're
Mhm.
harming others when really they need the help themselves.
Yeah, it's kind of like people don't see the human behind someone with NPD.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, there a lot of people who are narcissists are not good people or have not been
Mhm.
great people. There are a lot of victims of narcissistic abuse, and it's horrible. You know, there is no excuse for that. But
Mhm.
the one thing you should want is for those people to get the help they need. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, NPD is uncurable, but there are coping mechanisms. Like for me, some of my therapy recommendations are seeing people as equals,
Mhm.
you know, because that's a very big thing for me. So seeing people as equals and like working on coping strategies so I can calm myself down and be more empathetic.
Yeah.
Because when I get like triggered, that's when it can you know, turn into narcissistic rage.
Right, I've heard of that term before.
Yeah, so narcissistic rage is, well, basically it's you trigger a narcissist and then they want to get revenge.
Mhm.
Pretty much, you know, they become like that's the worst they'll ever become. They are
Right.
like we become manipulative, you know, we become like obsessive. Like for me, when anyone it's basically means a bruised ego. And
Right.
when it's an ego is all what MPD is about. And
Okay.
so for me, when I would get injured in that way, I would get either very, very angry and want to hurt this person, or I would become like obsessed with whether depending if it was like a partner I broke up with.
Mhm.
For example, he started seeing someone else like a couple weeks after I broke up with him, and
Mhm.
I just became obsessed. Like I just had to get him back. I needed him back,
Right.
and when I got him back, I didn't care anymore. You know, so it's
It was
very
just about
like
having that control,
yeah,
or, like, not control,
yeah,
but,
that
like,
control and
yeah.
like it's like how could you move on from me, you know?
Yeah.
And when I was younger, it was a lot worse. You know, I was in a long-term relationship when I was younger, actually from when I was 14 to about 18.
Wow.
And that was brutal.
Yep.
Being in a relationship, figuring out my mental health and going through like ODD and NPD, it was crazy. And I remember there was I so we weren't together at this time. It was kind of a break between us, and I ended up kind of seeing someone else,
Mhm.
and she found out and then tried to and I think that I was 16 at the time, so it would have been 3 years ago, almost 4. I'm turning 20 this year. So, um so she found out I was seeing somebody else, and she obviously felt betrayed, right? So she tried to cut contact with me, and I just like I absolutely lost it. And
Mhm.
this is probably the worst thing I've ever done. But to get that revenge back because I felt so hurt, I ended up calling the police and making a whole lie. So
Oh,
to get a
dear.
restraining order against her, to get these police to go to her house and um you know, like explain the situation to her parents so people would see her as the bad person and not me.
Right.
And what's hard is a year later, I had a conversation with the same girl, and it was tough because she was like, "Do you feel bad about that?" And I don't, which is hard. Like, it's like I know that was inherently wrong,
Mhm.
but it's like at the time for me, it's like you deserved it. You tried to paint me as a bad person, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like it's things like that that is like happens with narcissistic rage, and it's horrible. No one deserves that. Like, she definitely did not deserve that. And I do wish I regretted it, you know, but
That's so
hard
interesting
to.
how you phrase that. It's, "I wish I regretted it." It's you knew it was wrong, you know now that it was wrong, but you're clued into the fact that you should feel bad or empathetic for this, but you still acknowledge that you actually inside you don't.
Yeah, and
It's
that's one of the parts that's
fascinating.
really confusing about being self-aware. It's like a part I'm very also back and forth. It's like a part of me knows that was wrong. A part of me knows that I should regret it,
Mhm.
but at the same time, like, I don't. I don't have any feelings towards it. And it's funny because when we had that conversation, I I don't like being vulnerable, but I ended up crying because I felt bad about not feeling bad.
Mhm.
So it's very interesting.
Yeah, it must be really, like, conflicting in, like, do you ever feel like there's like, inside you, there's a small part that does feel bad? Or, like, you feel it's there, but it's not, like, the overwhelming emotion or feeling, or.
Yeah, 100%. So it's funny you mentioned that. That's kind of the difference between someone who is a vulnerable narcissist or like grandiose. So for me, or like covert or overt is what they call it. So for
Right.
me, I'm what they call a covert. So I'm not very extroverted. Um, like overts would be like, Donald Trump, for example. You know
Yeah,
what
it's
I mean?
literally
Like
the
political
name that was in my
leaders.
head. Yeah.
Whereas coverts are very like hidden.
Okay.
And so for me, since I'm vulnerable, all my sense of superiority and not feeling bad is because deep down, I'm very, very insecure and very
Right.
ashamed of myself. So, whereas for people who are like grandiose, from what I know, they don't have any of that insecurity. Like they are fully 100% think they are better
They believe
because,
that they are better, yeah.
yeah, like the childhoods are different. Like people who normally develop grandiose narcissism usually were put on a pedestal their whole childhood. Like their parents
Right.
like were like, "You're amazing, you're great, you're better than everyone," gave them everything, did everything for them,
Yeah.
and that's what that can lead to. So that's when they 100%
'Cause they
think that
believe
they
it.
are better
Mhm.
fully. But for me, I grew up feeling very, very alone. So, getting a little deep here, I started like self-harming when I was 7 years old.
Wow, that's so young.
Yeah. So I grew up with five siblings. My parents were there, and for some reason I still just felt very, very alone. My whole childhood I felt kind of like everyone hated me, no one loved me. Like I would refuse to go down to dinner because they were laughing, and I knew the second I would go down there, they wouldn't be laughing anymore.
Really?
And it's hard because I have had conversations with my parents and they've told me, "We did everything for you. Like we loved you. We took you on all these trips. We like took you to Utah every year. We went on this girls trip." And it's like I don't even remember half of that. I just
Hmm.
remember the feelings of like shame and being alone and nobody being there for me. Like I felt like hated my whole childhood pretty much. And so for me, and I don't know when this switch happened, eventually it just kind of did a 180. It was like, okay, I shouldn't feel this anymore. I'm better than everybody else. Why should I feel ashamed? Like I'm better than everybody else. There's no reason for me to feel this way. So
Mhm.
that 180 happened, and then that's kind of when the narcissistic traits started showing up, and
Yeah.
the ODD kind of changed into that because it was a way of like protecting myself. It was a defense mechanism, but that
Yeah.
changed when I was so young. It stuck. It
Yeah.
was like years and years and years of emotional trauma. When you are starting at 7 years old, self-harming and thinking everyone hates you up until you're 15,
Hmm.
like, that's hard, and I you know?
Yeah, it's like all you, because where it started so young, it's almost all you've ever known. I don't know how old we are when memories start. Like I think maybe 4 years old, you
Yeah.
start to remember things. So it's kind of nearly like all your childhood memories are of these negative feelings and these negative emotions. And
Yeah,
it's
100%.
it's interesting that you said like your parents. There was never any kind of like, I don't want, if I'm a pry, you don't have to answer, but there was no kind of like abuse. There was no kind of like, it was just a regular childhood. From the
Yeah,
outside, it's a regular childhood. Five
I
siblings.
absolutely. You know, people who knew my family would probably say, like, my parents make a lot of money. So people would say I was a spoiled kid. That I came from wealthy parents. So I got everything I wanted, but I never felt that way. And the thing is, the only thing I really have thought about is when I was born, my parents both worked a lot. You know,
Hmm.
my mom worked high up in a bank. My dad was a manager for retail stores. And so they were very, very inconsistent. I had
Right.
inconsistent caregivers. And what people don't realize is having inconsistent caregivers at a young age really messes with you.
Hmm.
You know, I was switching through nannies. My parents were never home. It was very hot and cold, and that can actually cause a lot of trauma for kids and when they grow up. And, you know, you don't really think about those things, but
No.
childhood trauma doesn't just have to be direct abuse.
Hmm.
It can be things as little as that.
Yeah.
Or for me, it's like maybe I just didn't feel loved in the way I needed. They like my parents probably showed me love for how they thought love was showed.
Yeah.
Because everyone feels it differently, you know?
Yeah. It
Love
doesn't mean
languages, right?
it doesn't mean that they're bad parents or that they failed. It just
Yeah,
means that they were doing everything they could for you as a family, providing, supporting, working hard.
yeah.
It's
Like
just
I had food, shelter, you know, 2 parents who didn't like directly abuse me. Like you'd think I would have, you know, grown
on
up to
paper
be
you had all
okay.
the foundations and all the
Really?
proper things to set you up for
Exactly. But
quote
and
unquote
then it's just
normal
those
life.
yeah, and there's just those little things like the inconsistent caregivers and then just all that shame and guilt and, you know, depression from a very, very young age. And honestly, I think a big part of it, like, it's just like it's interesting that I knew kind of what self-harm was at such a young age too.
Yeah.
And I think that doesn't help with when I was that age is when I started also getting into being online too. So around that age, 7, 8 is actually when I ended up getting like Discord, for example. The same
Right.
Discord I have right now, which is actually pretty funny. I have had the same account. And so I was
Damn.
also around a lot of like older people who we talked about these things. You know,
Mhm.
depression was talked about, self-harm was kind of normalized even back
Yeah.
then. And so also being like 7 years old, then being like, okay, so these guys are sad, they're self-harming, you know, so it's a thing I should do.
Right.
And it was also an attention thing too, because you could tell that they wanted it for attention and was getting attention. So me probably being at that young age was like, okay, is this what's gonna get me attention? You
Yeah.
know?
Did you find that attention something kinda hard to come by, with your parents being inconsistently in and out with so many siblings as well? Like, were you like a
Yeah,
middle child, younger child?
second youngest,
Second youngest?
second youngest, and but also my younger sister, she does have Down syndrome. Like,
Right.
did make things tough. You know, she's
Yeah, I can
only,
imagine.
I think she's only 4 years younger than me.
Right.
So by the time she was born, 4 years old, she got all the attention. I'm also a
Right.
twin.
Oh, no
So
way. Oh, wow.
yeah. So it was between me and my twin brother, and then, you know, then my younger sister was born with a disability. So the attention was very, very hard to grab. Even
Yeah.
after I started self-harming, I didn't really get that.
Mhm. Yeah, I can imagine that's actually really tough because obviously the oldest gets the attention until the next one's born, then the next one gets a bit of attention. Then you're a twin, so then your attention's instantly already divided. And then when you have a younger sibling with something like Down syndrome, the
They
attention
need like
that has to
yeah,
go to them. Like
it does
it's
have to. It does. And it's interesting though because all of my siblings for the most part turned out okay.
Right.
So it's very, very interesting to see how that works
How
out
what's it
too.
like what's it like being a twin? Does your twin experience anything similar to you?
Um, I'm not so him and I like we're not very close.
Right.
Um,
Interesting.
but he doesn't have any big issues, he doesn't drink, he doesn't smoke, he does have ADHD, but yeah, I feel like everyone's got a little bit of
Everyone's got it now,
ADHD.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And we kind of like being twins growing up, we didn't get along, quite obviously. Him and I beefed all the time.
No
I mean,
way.
it was horrible. I mean, like, we would be babies and he would be ripping chunks of my hair out. Like, we would be fighting. Like, he'd rip chunks of my hair out. I'd bite him. We'd throw things at each other. Like,
Oh,
it was
wow.
not like we did not get along. And
That's not like, yeah,
um,
what you'd think for twins. Normally twins are,
oh,
like, closer than anything, right?
and the funny thing is now we are like closer now.
Mhm.
Like, we don't talk, but like when we do talk, we'll just say anything.
Yeah, you
And so
do.
it's pretty interesting, um, because from when I have talked to him recently, like, he's doing pretty good. He's in the
Mhm.
Navy, he's got a lot of friends, got a lot of girlfriends, so eh, maybe that's why he's living now, but it's like,
Yeah.
other than that, no real, like, issues like I have, you know?
Mhm. And going into, like, the rest of your family, how when you got your diagnosis, how long have you had your diagnosis for?
Like, ooh, 7 months now?
Okay, so
Ish?
pretty recent.
8? Yeah.
Right. How did, your family respond to that? How did they
Yeah, I honestly I don't think my parents do know, but we've only had one conversation about it. For the most
Right.
part, I don't talk to my parents. I've lived with them, then I've moved out, then I lived with them, but it's just like I got I told them I was going
Mhm.
and that I was seeing a psychologist, but I didn't tell them for what. I didn't really tell them like what I got diagnosed with either. We did
Right.
end up having one conversation like 2 months ago about it, and they asked a bunch of questions. They were just like, "But we loved you. We did everything for you." Like, and they're just trying to understand me because
Yeah.
I think growing up, they obviously knew something was wrong with me. I was very, very angry. I had no empathy, no, regard for others. Obviously,
Mhm.
there was something going on there, but
Yeah.
they wouldn't have guessed full on like NPD. Like, I was diagnosed with ODD, the
Yeah.
oppositional defiant disorder. So they did know something was there, but I think they thought that was like it.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
And it's like unfortunate because like also that childhood definitely affected my relationship with my parents. You know? I don't know how it is for other people with NPD, but for me, they so often kind of like acted better than me and like above me that it kind of made me resent them.
Right.
Like now I cannot talk to my parents in person because it's like I sense them having a tone. It's like I feel a tone that's not even there. And
Right.
it's like, and it just makes my blood boil.
Mhm.
And it's honestly, it's quite sad,
Yeah.
sometimes
Must be
because my
hard.
mom it is. I wish I cared more about them because they're my parents, you know? I
Mhm.
remember, I think a year and a half ago now, and this was kind of also when I knew something was like, okay, maybe my empathy really isn't there. A year and a half ago, my mom got diagnosed with cancer. So it was stage 4 breast cancer.
Oh,
And
shit.
I remember when we found out, all my siblings were crying, were upset, and were in shock. And me, it's like, I didn't really, it sucks to say, but I didn't care.
Yeah.
I just felt nothing for my mother after like all these years of her acting like she's above me and better than me and tell me what to do and boss me around. It just like cut off all emotional attachment.
Right. So you kinda just felt like nothing at that
Yeah,
time.
I mean, yeah, and even now, like she has, you know, um, she's cancer free now. But
That's
it's just
awesome.
like when, especially during when her treatments, she obviously she needed help from people.
Mhm.
And the thing is that bugged me more than anything. The fact
How
she was
comes?
asking, I think it's interesting because it's just I felt like she was using it to an advantage. And that kind of thing bothers people with, narcissism, or especially me. It's like I felt like she was using it to an advantage to get like manipulate me into doing things for her. Um, and I just like it really set me off. And I remember having conversations with her being like, why don't you do this to like by yourself? You don't need help. Like, why are you using your cancer to an advantage? And
Damn.
it was,
But, like, do you
and
not like, did nothing, like, in your head kind of twig that, like, she's so sick that she, like, physically can't do these things without someone else?
yeah, and that's the thing. It didn't, and I think that's really where the lack of empathy
Mhm.
comes from for NPD. Like, I just like it's like she's like the saying you see people like cardboard cutouts.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I am. I don't see people, I don't see their emotions, they're just kind of like, yeah, cardboard cutouts. I can't really get through them,
Interesting.
I can't sympathize with anything that's going on with them,
Right.
and
That's
that's definitely one of the things I'm working on in therapy, and it's hard learning that.
I can imagine that's really hard because for me as a person, one of my biggest traits is empathy. I think I sometimes have too much empathy. Like
Yeah.
if I say one thing slightly with a raised voice, I'm like, oh crap, like are you okay? I didn't mean to make you feel that way, kind of thing. I'm constantly thinking of how my actions make other people feel. Sometimes even too much. I feel like I can be
Yeah.
hyper vigilant on it. Um, so in my head, I just find it fascinating how, like, how you describe it is incredible. Like just cardboard cutouts that you're so self-aware to it is
Yeah.
is remarkable.
Yeah, and it's like it's also very tough being self-aware because it's like the way I feel, I kinda know why. But it's
Hmm.
like I can't really stop it sometimes. It's like I know
Yeah,
why, but like, why am I still doing this then? Like,
yeah. Do you feel
why
like
am I still feeling this way?
you're constantly conflicting with
Very, very,
yourself? Right.
all the time. And
Hard.
it's hard. I also think that like funny enough, I think one of the misconceptions is that, you know, not all narcissists have no empathy. It is something we can learn, or it's something that is very, very selective.
Hmm.
Like for my younger sister, I have a lot of empathy towards her. Like if
Yeah.
anyone hurts her, I lose my mind.
Right.
Like my mom sometimes will like so due to like some medical issues, she needs to be put on a diet. And
Hmm.
my mom she won't give my sister like sweets, for example, and like I can see my sister wants it, and I will just sometimes I'll pick up fights with my mom. I'm like, come on, like just give her this stuff. Like just like I
Yeah.
feel bad for her, it's like
Interesting.
it's like I feel empathetic for her because she also can't um tell her feelings well. You know what I
Right.
mean? But it's like I can tell what she's feeling, and
Yeah.
I feel very empathetic for her. So it's interesting for sure.
Yeah, really interesting because your little sister requires, I'm assuming constant, like
Yes.
24-hour help,
Yeah.
and that your understanding of that, and you recognize that, but maybe because of the relationship you had with your mum growing up, and when
Yeah.
she needed that constant help, it made you feel a
It
different way. You
wasn't there.
couldn't. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Wow.
because, like, my sister's never done anything to me, she's never acted, like,
Yeah.
better than me, obviously, or called me
Mhm.
out on anything.
Yeah. That's
So,
fascinating.
yeah, so it is very selective,
Yeah.
um, and it's hard, like you said, it's very conflicting. I constantly feel differently, it's like I'm not one person, in
Mhm.
every different situation, I am a completely different person. I
Yeah.
will act differently. It's like all my morals and ethics will just switch depending on the situation.
Yeah. Is that kind of
So it's
like
like
borderline personality disorder? Is that, or is that something else? I'm not too sure.
I
Like a
believe like B you could be talking about like black and white thinking, like
right.
splitting. That's like a
Yeah.
BPD thing where you see things as all good or like all bad.
Right.
Um but like for me, it also could be as well
Mhm.
because for people with BPD they are same thing for me, scared of abandonment.
Mhm.
So you can very much change up on who you are for someone so they don't leave you.
Mhm. Right. Do you
And it's
think maybe, I don't know, sometimes the way with the rage or the, I don't, not necessarily lashing out, but that's how you feel towards certain situations. is it a narcissistic thing to you kind of do it because deep down you're like afraid it's going to happen to you, so you go first, if that makes sense? You know how some people will feel threatened, so then they'll attack someone before they get attacked. If that makes any sense?
I don't like, do you mean like, do I harm them before they can harm me kind of thing?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I honestly, I don't think so, because for me, the only thing that triggers me is when someone takes a jab at my ego. So
Right.
if someone doesn't do that, it's
Mhm,
like I don't really care. But it's hard. It's very different between friendships and relationships. Because
mhm.
friendship wise, I can make great friendships.
Yeah.
Or because I'm also very, very selective. Like if I see someone who drinks a lot or smokes a lot, I will
Gone.
belittle them in my head too, and I'll be like, okay, no, you're
Okay.
not someone I want in my life.
Mhm.
And then, so for friendships, it's really quite simple. Oh, I have a friend that I like, or I'll keep to myself. And
Yeah.
usually, I do prefer to keep to myself because having APD, I think I'm better than everyone. So it's hard, and it's like
Yeah.
it's not even like also feeling like I'm better than everyone. It's also like a lot of the time I again don't see people as people, so there is no ranking. It's
Mhm.
like I'm the only person in the world.
Yeah.
So it's either I'm better than you or it's like
You don't
you don't have a
exist.
rank because who are
Yeah,
you? You're
yeah,
not like a
yeah.
person. And it's really interesting also how NPD manifests in relationships versus friendships.
Right.
You know, relationships, you're supposed to be vulnerable.
Mhm.
It is very hard meeting someone and liking them, especially with having NPD, because you give them the opportunity to break down your barriers and to like bruise your ego, like
Yeah.
especially in like the talking stage, because they're
Mhm.
not. It's not like you guys are exclusive, but for me, I will like it automatically is exclusive. Like if you're
Yeah.
talking to me, I will be
You're putting all your
constantly
energy into
worrying.
them.
Yeah, and it's not like that for me. I'm so insecure. I will think that they're talking to other people or seeing other people, and it very much caused me to be manipulative a little bit because
Mhm.
it's like I'm trying to find ways to prove whether you're doing this thing or not.
Yeah.
And if this person is seeing someone else, although we are not officially together, I will lose it. Like it hurts my ego.
Yeah.
It's like why would you be talking to somebody else?
Goes back to the attention thing as well, right?
Yep, and the fear of abandonment too. Because for me,
Mm.
it's all about underlying insecurity and underlying fear of abandonment.
Yeah.
And it's tough. Relationships with people who have NPD. It's
Mhm.
like also the criticism thing. It's like anything to do with ego. Like it's like for me, it's like my brain. Like I hear someone, they have a tone, and my brain just switches it to
Mhm.
criticism. It's like they
Right.
could be someone else could see them they have a great tone, but me, I'll be like, oh, they're attacking me. They're saying this is wrong with me. They're saying this. They're saying that, and then I get very very defensive.
Yeah. To be fair, I find it's interesting because I've actually noticed that about myself sometimes is the way someone says something can trigger something in my head where like I
Hmm.
don't get angry, but I'm almost just frustrated or upset because why would you say it like that? Why are you saying it this way?
Yeah.
Why aren't you saying it in a nicer way or in a nicer tone or
And
wording
that's
it
probably
differently?
you being very empathetic where that comes out too. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, wait. Um, and I think like to some degree that may be for all people,
Mm.
like especially if you're being open to somebody or like having a conversation with somebody and you kind of sense a bit of criticism, you're just like, okay, hold on. But I also think it's like the reaction of it too.
Mhm.
Like for me, it'll be way out of proportion.
Yeah. Yeah, no
And
one wants
it's
their ego damaged, do they? Like
Yeah. It's like yeah, it's crazy. Like for me it's all everything is based on ego and how I view myself.
mhm.
And
Is
that's sorry,
no,
go
go on.
ahead.
No, go on, continue, sorry.
And that's why it's like also tough when they talk about NPD and BPD relationships cuz
Mhm.
both of it is underlying sense of abandonment, but it is the someone with BPD like wants love, wants attention, and they will do anything to get that. They will totally validate their partner, totally like act like they're so much better, you know? And for me,
Mhm.
that's what I need. I need someone who thinks I'm way better than them and
Yeah,
someone who
yeah.
like will put me on a pedestal, and people with BPD do that. You know, my ex-boyfriend has BPD and that's what he did at the start.
Oh,
So that's why it was such like honestly like a love bomb relationship, because it's like I love bombed him because he kept showing me all of this like love and attention and admired
yeah.
me. And I was just like, this is fucking great.
Yeah. Yeah, because for most people, you would look at love bombing as this is a toxic trait. This is controlling or manipulative or whatever. But if you're doing it to each other, or was it kind of like one sided? Like, did it
it
work for both of you for a period
it
of time?
for a while it did, because I needed that attention, so I stayed, and he needed someone to stay. And he got
Right.
people to stay through giving that attention and that
Mm-hmm.
validation. And then this is kind of what's tough about also like having NPD. You know, after the first 4 months, I just like I couldn't really mask that anymore. You know, I said all these things so he could stay in my life, and it felt very real. It felt real
Mm-hmm.
to me, absolutely. And it's not like I knew at the time that that wasn't really me.
Mm-hmm.
But then like 4 months in, I just did like a complete 180. You know, I couldn't even like care for that guy. Like one night I woke up and he meant nothing to me. I couldn't even
Really, just like
remember,
that.
just like that. I couldn't
Fuck.
remember any of the feelings of love he gave me. Nothing. And that's kind
Wow.
of, and it's interesting how that happens, because it's like that wasn't who I was. I can't show all that love because I don't feel all that. The only thing I felt was admired and validated and attention, you
Yeah, it was
know?
like tick, tick, tick. These are all the
Yeah.
things that is making my brain happy, kind of.
It's like for narcissists, love is validation and
Yeah.
being admired.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. And then I just after a couple months, it was just like, okay, this guy, one, I really like belittled him after that. I saw him as inferior too. That was part of the issue. Like one day I just switched and he was like, okay, once he stopped like kind of fully love bombing me, I was just like, you're you're not special. You
Mhm.
know, which is very, very harsh to say.
Yeah.
But I was just like, "You are like every other person," you know, once he stopped validating me. And so that's also that what occurred in the 180, and I was just like, "Why am I with you? Like, I
Mhm.
don't feel anything for you. You are, like, inferior to me." And it was hard, and honestly, I am lucky that we ended things that wasn't so back and forth.
Mhm.
Although again, a couple months after we broke up, when I found out he was seeing someone else, it kind of triggered a bit of obsession in me.
Mhm.
Um, but luckily I did get over that. But it's just like for a lot of narcissists, they do end up being with someone who has BPD, and it's like that for years. Years on
Wow.
end, that back and forth love bombing, or the person with BPD leaves, narcissist finds out like they don't care and comes crawling back, you know?
Mhm. Do you think that's a bad thing, or do you think that's just how it works, and that if it works for those two people, then that's okay?
I think, that's a good question. I do think it's a bad thing, because it's
Mm.
all based on, I think it's more worse for the person with BPD too, because the person with
Yeah.
NPD, it's all based on validation. It's like, "Oh, they come back, great." And, and they don't have that empathy. They don't really feel so hurt like the person with BPD does.
Yeah.
They are more than anything, it's the person with BPD who is getting manipulated more than the
Yeah, and they're
narcissist.
the one that's gonna get hurt in the long
So
run.
they're yeah, in the long run, they're the one who's getting hurt and damaged, and that's not a good thing. Being in a
No.
relationship like that is like horrible. From my standpoint, I there was a time I kind of lived for it a little bit, that
Mhm.
chase, um, and them and him coming back, and then eventually I was just like, okay, this isn't good.
Mhm.
And the way I, funny enough, the way things ended is just when I moved on to someone else who's giving me validation,
Yeah.
and
So it
that's
was
what's
kinda like
tough.
the relationship was kinda like always on your terms in a way, because
Yeah.
at any moment you could have just gone.
Yeah.
And I think that's not
And
really how relationships should work, or how
exactly. And
healthily
it's
should work.
yeah, and it's hard because narcissists feed off validation and attention, and a good way to get that is from relationships and from
Mhm,
talking to people. And so for me, the only way I get over a relationship like that is just moving on to the next person.
mhm,
And I think for me, I have sort of like found ways to get attention in a different way. You know what I mean?
mhm.
Not just from relationships. If you were to go on my TikTok, it is all thirst traps.
Really?
I'm serious. It is all thirst traps. So one of the ways, it's funny because I brought it up with my therapist. One of the ways I, cope is, getting attention from these people on TikTok.
Yeah.
And and it's healthier than the alternative. Like, I post those
You're not
traps and just
hurting
I get, like,
someone.
40 comments complimenting me. I'm just like,
Yeah.
"Great." So, I found, like, an alternative in that way,
Mhm.
but it's also kind of like it's interesting because then if I post and I don't get those comments or get those likes, I feel like shit.
Yeah, do you get angry, upset, or
I get very,
frustrated?
like, insecure.
Yeah.
So, my narcissism before used to very come out in anger, and
Mhm.
now it really just comes out in like insecurity. I feel the
Right.
more self-aware I get, the more insecurity I feel. Since
Mhm.
it's all based from shame and insecurity for me,
Yeah.
it's hard because yeah, the more self-aware, it's like, okay, I'm feeling this way because I'm insecure. I'm not just angry. They didn't just piss me off, they hurt me. I'm
Mhm.
sad, I'm devastated, and I feel that more than anger.
Yeah.
And it's hard. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like it's a hard trade because before I would feel no insecurity, no shame, but
Mhm.
just anger that would hurt everybody else but me. But
Yeah.
now I'm hurting me and not anyone else.
Mhm.
So
It's
it's
hard
tough.
because it's like it is a constant catch-22 of hurting yourself or hurting others, hurting yourself, hurting
Mhm.
others. Like, I can't even begin to imagine, like, how conflicting that is.
Yeah, it is very conflicting, but
Yeah.
honestly, I don't think I would change it. I think I'm very happy that I have become more self-aware.
Mhm.
Um, you know, so recently, I think I got one of the biggest like narcissistic triggers I have in a very, very long time.
Mhm.
Since I was younger. So basically what happened was I was talking to this girl and she honestly I think she's a bit of a narcissist just like me,
Yeah.
which didn't help. I'm not gonna lie.
Your radar's going
Um,
off.
it was, but we just started like validating each other and giving each other attention. You know how a lot of talking stages start, and I ended up getting very very like obsessed with her. I like there was just something about her.
Mhm.
And so I ended up flying out to the States to see her,
Right.
and pretty much it was shit. It went to shit. It was horrible. I am not gonna lie. I flew to see her and it was awkward. We couldn't have a single conversation. It was
Really?
bad. And the
Oh,
thing
no.
is, what was tough is I knew I didn't like her, but it's like I had to keep her in my life. It's like the thing is, I knew she wasn't the person for me before I even flew out there, but it's just
Wow.
like I needed her to stay in my life. I didn't have anyone else. She just give me this validation, this attention, and I needed her.
Uh-huh.
And then pretty much like the night before I left, while I was there, she slept with somebody else.
Oh,
Oh
wow.
god, bro. Ouch. And although we weren't
Dude.
exclusive, it just
While
set
you're still
everything
there?
off.
That's rough.
Yeah.
That's rough.
It sucked a little bit. It's like, especially because I spent so much money going out there.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, it sucked because I was like also this was the first kind of like relationship where I tried to be vulnerable. So I was open
Mm.
with her. I talked to her about like my NPD and my childhood and how I feel, when I felt really jealous, instead of getting mad and giving her the silent treatment or blocking her, I would I would talk to her. And
Mhm.
and it sucked because, I remember sending her like a 3-minute long voice message about me feeling jealous and she responded with, "I don't know, dog." That's all. That's that's all she said.
Wow.
Brutal. So, anyways, I went out there and all that happened, and then it's like she really, really messed with me because I
Mhm.
left, and then she was just like, "Can we still be a thing? Can we work this out?" And this is when I was trying to learn some empathy. I was like, okay, maybe this person acted like this because their childhood wasn't so great. Maybe this person, like, she gave me a lot of mixed signals. So I was like, maybe this person is avoidant due to trauma,
Mhm.
you know? And so it was hard because I was trying to be empathetic
Trying
because
to
I
understand.
knew what that felt like.
Mhm.
And so when I got back home, she was like, "Let's work this out." And I was like, "Yeah, okay, okay." And then boom, it's still mixed signals, like no communication, nothing emotional, and it was very, very hard for me. And then I remember I cut things between us, and I tried which is something that is very, very hard to do for me because
Mhm.
I'll be left with nobody, who to give me attention. And
Yeah.
so when I cut her off, she texted me and she um used every single little insecurity I told her and vulnerable, like me being vulnerable, to her against me. So like every single of
Ouch.
my insecurities, she texted me. She was like you are nothing. You're immature. You're spoiled. You hold your parents' hand," which is none of this was true, but I
Mm.
think she just tried to get to me, you know.
Right.
And she was just like, "Yeah, like you got played. I fucked with your head. Like I did all that," and it was hard. And I remember I usually in those situations, I would lose it. I would
Yeah.
get so angry, I would get so upset, and I just was like, "Okay, if it makes you feel better that you played me, fine." And honestly, and this happened recently, and I think it also was a very, very big change for me because
Yeah.
that was the
Big
first
learning.
time I was ever able to just stand back. Since
Yeah.
then, usually at this point, I've become, like, very obsessed with her,
Mhm.
but I haven't looked at her pages, I haven't unblocked her or anything, I haven't looked at her, like, TikTok reposts like some people do these days. I was just like, "Okay."
That's
And it
a
was
big W.
it is, and it was honestly really, really hard at the time, but it's also there was relief too.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that's one of the things that's good about being self-aware. It's like you do have these little victories that people who aren't self-aware wouldn't have, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
you wouldn't be able to pick
They would
up
have
on.
just yeah, they would have just probably gone angry and mad and tried to do everything in their power to get this person back or to
Yeah.
hurt them.
What you would have done in the past or
Exactly, which yeah, I have done in the past and what I would have done.
Mhm. That's really cool. I think that goes for I feel like in not just in NPD, but in all
Yeah,
sorts of mental health journeys is being able to
absolutely.
acknowledge any kind of growth or improvement or situation where you would have handled it this way a year ago, but a year later you've handled it in a much more mature, better way where you can see your growth.
Yeah, and so not just with like MPD, but it could be with any disorder. Like
Anything, yeah.
self-awareness is the start of being able to like challenge your disorder.
100%.
It is the start of feeling power and being able to overcome these challenges. And it's truly it's amazing. And
Mhm.
it's very unfortunate that a lot of people with MPD do not get that feeling and that option a lot of the time,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah.
Um So I don't know. Do you know a lot about like cluster A, cluster B, cluster C disorders?
No, what is that?
It's kind of it's like categories of disorders that kind of have the same symptoms. So
Right.
NPD would be in something called cluster B, which I believe antisocial personality disorder is in there,
Mhm.
borderline, and a few others. And it's kind of they have like overlapping
That kinda
symptoms.
crossover, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so basically it's hard because borderline personality disorder is in that same cluster, but it's very like you feel bad for someone who has BPD. Does
Mhm.
that make sense? Like it's like
Yeah.
people with BPD get help, they have so many therapy choices, but then
Yeah.
NPD is just there's nothing. And it's very interesting because it's kind of the same underlying insecurity and fear of abandonment that comes out in two total different ways,
Mhm.
but yet one is like demonized and the other you feel bad for.
Yeah, yeah, I think do you think that's because of the empathy that comes with BPD that isn't
Yeah,
there for a lot of the time with MPD? People
100%.
just think because like, oh, because they haven't got empathy, then it's like, yeah, like I say,
Yeah.
demonize.
No, 100%. People with BPD are very, very empathetic, whereas people with MPD aren't.
Mhm.
And um and a lot of people with empathy are abusive due to that lack of empathy and due to that rage and those insecurities coming out as just anger. And it's like, okay, why should these people get help? It's like you just see
Mhm.
these people as horrible, horrible human beings, and it's like, why do they deserve help? You're not thinking about the human behind it. You're thinking about their actions, and you just want to get away from them. And you just
Yeah.
and it is very tough.
I imagine it's like a lonely thing to have because, especially with like the internet these days, people are how to handle a narcissist or stay away from a narcissist,
Hmm.
like and things like that. So it must like social media's. I don't know. I feel like it's. Do you think it's changed the way people not changed, but emphasized the way people perceive narcissism and
I know. So I have a couple posts when it comes to my NPD, and half the comments are like, "No offense, but if you have NPD, I'm running away from you." My abusive ex had that. My abusive mom had that. I'm running away from you. You don't deserve help. You don't. I do get a lot of that,
yeah?
and I do also get a lot of people asking me. Funny enough, how do you get revenge on someone with NPD?
Jeez,
To me, which I find that very, very bold.
it's
And
just a
it's
little
funny
bit.
because in my eyes, it's like you at that point are not any better.
No.
You are trying to purposefully hurt that person. And I get it. It does not mean it's okay that they hurt you. But
Hmm.
it's like, why are you asking me how to manipulate someone with MPD, how to make their life miserable? That's what they did to you.
Yeah.
Two wrongs don't make a right. Like, hey, my mom told me that all the time when I was growing up.
Yeah,
And now I'm using it. Like,
it's
it's like
true.
it's very interesting, and it's hard. And then there's not only that, there are those people out there who like Patrick Bateman type thing, American Psycho. They're like, I want NBD, I want no emotions. There's a whole like
Jeez,
alpha male thing going on where it's like having
really?
no empathy is great. And so there are a select few posts like that, which doesn't help either.
No.
You're talking about MPD and how you want the empathy so you can hurt others.
Mm,
I,
it
I'm
just makes no sense.
Yeah, and it's just like so they talk about it like it's also a good thing to have NPD. So they're posts like that. It's like, yeah, I love having
Glorifying it.
NPD because I get to hurt people and not give a fuck about that.
What the heck is wrong with people, man?
So it's very hard. There are a few influencers on TikTok. I actually only know one of them, but he's known as the nameless narcissist
Oh God.
or something.
Right.
And it's interesting because people like him talk about well, he talks about his NPD and narcissism and how narcissists are and how they act, but it's funny because he it kind of seems like to me he's using that as a way to manipulate people and to
Right.
get
Yeah.
attention because he is getting so much attention, and it just kind of feels like fake, like an act. Like it's
Like
like
he's rage
he
baiting people and stuff. Like,
yeah, and it looks like he's using like self-awareness to his advantage, but he's not actually self-aware. Like he's being
hmm.
open in a way where he wants people to like feel bad for him. He wants like this validation, this attention. And it's
Yeah.
like it very much so like rubs me the wrong way. Like I look at his page and I'm like, okay, he's not wrong. A lot of the information he says is correct.
Hmm.
But I just feel like there is sort of a bad intent behind it.
The way he's delivering it is maybe not with the best intentions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's difficult because it's so hard to spot the people that are trying, not just with MPD, but with anything. If they're trying to raise awareness for certain things, online and in content, you don't always know that people have the best intentions,
Absolutely.
and a lot of them don't. A lot of people don't.
No.
Like it goes with streaming. When I used to stream, I'm seeing a lot of like toxicity about streaming on Twitch at the moment, just in gaming of
Really?
people.
What has that been about?
Just there's a lot of going around about people like view botting and things like that,
Ah,
and people talking about you don't really know who's got your back. You don't know, like, everyone's out there for themselves. It's a dog eat dog world.
mm,
And it is true, like there's so many beautiful things about Twitch and about streaming. Like most
mhm.
of my close friends I've met through streaming on Twitch. And I mentioned it on a podcast a couple episodes ago where I'd rather meet 1,000 people, lose 990 of them, and keep 10 really close friends than not have gone through them at all. But
Absolutely.
it is very, very hard to spot who is doing what for the right and wrong reasons. Comes out in the end. I think like it
Yeah.
always comes out in the end, but it's just
It's very hard, and it's very
mm,
hard to see intent behind people. Especially, for me, what's funny is people who are my friends, like people I meet online, especially, and people who I meet through school, honestly have no idea that I have NPD. When I have
really.
eventually said it, they've been like, "No way." And that's also what's interesting. There's also a lot of stigma that's also not really correct. They say every
Yeah.
person with NPD is an asshole and very, very outgoing and very, very extrovert and very like
Yeah.
better than everybody. And for me, it's like I feel that way. I feel superior, but it's like I'm not gonna say it to someone's face. It's
Right.
all very much internalized.
Okay.
If someone makes me feel inferior, that's when I will have those feelings of no, I'm better. But it's just all internalized. I'm not gonna go in someone's face and be like, "Hey, you suck." like,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, when a lot of people think that's how it is.
So for a lot of narcissists, it's almost act, whereas for you, it's more react. It's like
Yeah.
you're not being the first one to go for like I'm better than you, but if someone says like, "Oh, you're actually a piece of shit," you're like, "Well, hang on a minute."
Yes, exactly. And again, that's where the grandiose versus vulnerable come in. It
Yeah.
is very, very different. And it's tough. NPD is a crazy big spectrum. Manifests differently in every single person, which
Mm-hmm.
honestly makes things hard because you can't just look at me and be like, okay, so all narcissists are very easily able to grow and be self aware. Hell no.
Mm-hmm.
Hell no. Like, that is, like it is very, very rare
I
for
was gonna say,
someone with MBD to be self-aware,
yeah.
and it's tough because a part of me it also feels like me having NPD, though, is better than having narcissistic traits, because a lot of people with narcissistic traits, like I mentioned earlier, just
Mm-hmm.
fully believe they're better, They
Yeah.
have narcissistic traits, they have, like, the baseline traits of being an asshole, being, better than
Arrogance.
everybody, and feeling superior. That's
Mm-hmm.
what they call someone with narcissistic traits. Just someone who's a piece of shit, basically. And
Yeah.
I just feel like and that's hard. And for them,
Yeah.
it's like there's no I don't really understand where that comes from, It's like there's not a lot that's going on kind of deeper down.
Yeah. Like you
It's
say, it all manifests differently, doesn't it? It's depending on our childhoods and
yeah. It's like
environment.
interesting how you can get the same disorder from either being put on a pedestal or from like feeling nothing constantly.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
that
then
is
that's when the
actually.
symptoms are also, like, totally different. So part of me wonders why those 2 kind of, like, aren't different,
Mhm.
but I think it's all just kind of, like, baseline, the manipulation, the low empathy,
Yeah.
I think it's just because they have the same baseline symptoms.
Mhm. Yeah, because I feel like a lot of people with narcissistic traits, if you've been in, say, like a toxic relationship, someone that either is a narcissist or has the traits of, then if you're stuck in that loop of say, an abusive relationship for a few
Yeah.
years, once you get out, that the person that was the abused can then actually take on those traits themselves, can't they? And it kind of just
Yeah, I'm sure they absolutely could. Um, when it comes to traits, I'm not really honestly too sure how that works because I know
mm,
for me, I it's not curable. I can work on my empathy, I can work on seeing people as like equals, but I'll always easily have a very like low sense of self. I'll always like my ego will always be very like easily damaged.
mhm,
But it's all about coping mechanisms and it's like for people with traits, how does that come and go? I'm
yeah,
not I'm not too sure. I'm
yeah,
wondering if does something happen for them to have these traits or do they just like were they hurt by someone and then need to do that 180 and then can it reverse once they've been in a healthy relationship or through
mhm.
therapy?
Yeah,
Who knows?
I think it probably stems from we take on the traits and like we kind of become who we surround ourselves with.
Yeah.
And I think if you're constantly surrounded by someone that makes you feel like a piece of shit or makes you feel certain ways or act certain ways, we tend to start to act these ways as well. Like, and that works
Yeah,
negatively and
and hurt other
positively.
people. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
for sure. I get what you're saying.
So I
Yeah,
think
that is
it's
probably
not so much traits, but it's like behaviors we pick up.
yes, yeah.
So
No,
it's
I get what you're saying. I agree with you.
mm,
That is probably it. And it's like but it's very interesting because at the same time, they say manipulation is a big narcissistic trait, but it's like how do you learn manipulation? If someone manipulate you,
yeah.
it's kind of hard to learn. Like for me, when I have been in relationships, like they couldn't even tell I was manipulating them. And it's like for me, it's all like subconscious. Like I don't
Mm,
even realize I'm manipulating them until months later.
yeah.
And I started reflecting on my past relationships and who I was. It was like, okay, I very much so manipulated them. I very much so like love bombed them. I very much
Right.
was not a good person. And it's like I didn't
Mhm.
see that. They didn't see that. It's very interesting.
Yeah, no, I like what you're saying actually about how do you know if you're manipulating someone? Like, are people with traits whereas you might not be like conscious that you're doing it, but for people with traits, are they conscious that they're doing it? I suppose it probably varies from person to person.
Yeah.
Some people do, some people don't.
Because people say manipulation is like a conscious choice, you know what I mean? But for me,
Mm,
it's like kind of subconscious because I'm trying to protect myself.
yeah.
So I'm just like using kind of all these manipulation tactics, but like not knowing I am.
Mhm. It's just a
I mean, there are the
defense.
baseline ones like if you're ghosting someone or like give someone the silent treatment, that's kind of obvious. But there are very much so like more hidden
Mhm.
manipulation, making people feel bad, like always one upping someone.
Yeah. And I think that is a reason why reflection is so important because, like I say, being self aware and reflecting on past behaviors and things that you've done or how you've acted, that's where the growth comes from. That's
Absolutely.
how you grow and that's how you improve and hopefully live a better life and become better human beings.
Yeah, 100%. And
Mm.
everyone's capable of growth.
Yeah.
Just because someone, there's nothing I hate more than someone having a disorder or being a narcissist and saying, I cannot grow.
Mhm.
There, you can always become some better version of yourself.
Yeah.
And, for me, it very much so varies. I kind of think sometimes as NPD is a superpower for me.
That's a
I'm
good way.
not
That's
gonna
a nice
lie.
way to look at it. I mean, I suppose it's how you have to look at everything that you
Yeah.
the card you get dealt, isn't it?
I mean, like, I'm stuck with it, so might as well, like, do the best I can. Like, for me, my low
Mhm.
empathy. So I'm a first responder,
Mhm.
and I can think very, very clearly in those situations. Because I don't have a lot of
Right.
empathy, I'm not very clouded by
Your
emotions.
judgment doesn't get clouded at all.
No, no, and I don't like when someone's injured. I don't feel bad, so I just
Yeah.
deal with the injury.
Fuck,
It's
that's incredible.
Yeah, it was like and the thing is for me, like I feel superior, but I'm not gonna do anything about it. That's
Mhm.
why I've always pushed to do more and more. Like I was I started a mechanic apprenticeship when I was 15 years old.
Mhm.
So I've been in like a mechanic apprentice. I'm like a sous chef at 19 and a first responder. And it's like I've done so many things because I just feel like I need to also prove it. It's like
Mhm.
for me, I don't know how it is for other people. But it's like I feel like I'm better, but it's just like I can't not do anything about it. I need to have some
You have
proof.
to back it up as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's weird because a big part of it for me too is a big thing for me is also like money. I'm very so like I don't see people, I don't see emotions, but I see like value.
Mhm.
I can see whether people are like I don't know. It's kind of odd. For me, money is like a lot to me. That's what
Yeah.
makes me feel
It drives a lot of
better than
people.
others. So it drives me yeah, exactly, just to do better.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because I bet if you asked 100 people what a person with MPD's career would be, I don't think a single one of them would say an emergency responder.
For Oh, like, if you were asked someone who doesn't
If
have
you're asking,
NPD?
yeah, if you're asking someone that doesn't have MPD, what like would a typical job role for someone with that be? You wouldn't say first responder because when in your head you think anything in the
Yeah.
medical field, you have to have empathy, you have to feel something. But
No, the first thing that I was told when I went to, my medical first responder school was, "If you don't have empathy, you're going to fail. If you have no empathy, you cannot continue this program. Just leave. Just
oh
don't stay."
wow,
And it's like, because you you deal with a lot of death. You need to comfort a lot of people. You need to tell people their loved one has passed.
mm-hmm.
But it's like I don't need empathy for that. I just feel like for me, I know what the right things to say are. That is one
Right,
thing I'm very, very good at is although I have no empathy, it just means I do good things because I want to. You know what I mean?
yeah,
I can talk to people and I'm close to people because I also want to. And I
yeah,
know how to talk to people. I know how to talk to all sorts of people because although I don't feel that emotional connection, it kind of helps me talk to people.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And so for me, it's like I know the right things to say. And so I don't understand why I would need empathy for that. And
Mhm.
maybe it's because some people can't like fake empathy, but I just feel like in those situations, all you can really do is listen. That's just a big part of it, is just listening.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think the biggest thing you said as well is empathy can cloud so many people's judgments if you haven't got a handle of your emotions or you can't control yourself in a certain situation, you can't give the proper correct treatment or things like that. So being able to completely have that empathy valve shut off, you are allowed to be able to do your job as
Yeah.
effectively as possible.
And it's also like if your loved one is dying and you see the first responder freaking out, you're gonna freak out. Everyone's
Yeah.
gonna freak out.
Yeah.
And it's yeah, I know some people, some first responders can like turn off the empathy, but eventually it does get to them.
Mhm.
When you're in those situations, it will get to you. And for
Yeah,
me,
of course.
it never has. You know what it's like to work a kitchen job.
Yeah.
It's stressful. I'm sure you know that. And for
Mhm.
me, it's like even in situations like that, I don't feel any stress.
Mhm.
Like my boss will come up to me after work, she's like, "Are you okay? Are you good? Are you stressed?" And I'm like, "No."
Yeah.
Like, why would I be stressed? It's like, man, we were just in a major rush. And for me, it's like I don't feel that whatsoever. And
Yeah.
it's really interesting because it's like it's not even big situations like someone is very injured. It's like situations like that, I don't get stressed. Or
Mhm.
when I was a couple months ago, I had some money issues and I moved on my own. I started college. I got a pretty shitty job. I didn't save any money.
Mhm.
And those are situations like that you should be stressed out,
Yeah.
but I wasn't. So that's also one thing about empathy, which is very interesting, is that lack of empathy also correlates with a very like lack of feeling stress. It's really a
Yeah.
lack of feeling anything. You can
Yeah.
say there's lack of empathy, but I don't feel 99% of the time I don't feel any emotions. I'm
Mhm.
not very happy. I'm not sad. I'm just kind of like I'm just
Just
here.
existing.
I
Yeah.
do things day to day. I'm just existing. And I remember like I had a conversation with my mother, and I was just like I don't remember. We were talking about dying for some reason. I don't remember what it was, but I was just like, any day I would take me. Like, if I had a choice between living or, like, going now, I would go now, easily.
Mhm.
And she's just like, "Why? That's so sad, that's so depressing." I'm just like I just, like I don't wanna work for other people for the rest of my life. I don't wanna,
Mhm.
like I don't just don't really feel any connection to, like, anything.
Yeah.
And
That's
and
interesting.
it's hard. I just feel like there's not really a good way to learn that
Mhm.
because although I've been in therapy for years, I still haven't learned to feel anything except for those moments where I feel insecure,
Yeah.
which for me as a also as a covert, I try to avoid those situations, which is
Mhm.
why I'm also it's probably easier for me is I don't get triggered as much as other people would because I don't put myself in those.
You keep yourself out of those situations as much as
Yeah,
possible. Yeah.
yeah.
Is that do you find that's probably one of the best ways to cope with it is just kinda sticking to yourself and
Absolutely. I mean, especially at the start. I mean, eventually, a good thing to learn is coping mechanisms,
yeah.
which again, that depends on who you are in therapy, but that's a good way to do it, is just coping. And that goes for everything. You need to learn how to cope with your triggers to
Mhm.
get better. Because when you get triggered, your brain spirals. And that goes with anything. You're triggered, your brain spirals, you don't know, you're confused, you're not thinking properly. So the first step to do cope, whether it's like walking away or, funny enough, when I was very, very angry as a kid, one of my coping mechanisms was eating ice cream because it sent
There
off
you
like
go.
serotonin or like
Yeah.
dopamine or whatever. So it made me more happy and also made me
Mhm.
shut my mouth when before I said anything I'd regret.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that is really good advice. It is just figuring out how to cope with your triggers, finding out what your triggers are, what sets you off,
Exactly.
and then dealing with them, yeah.
And that's where also if anybody's interested in is childhood healing.
Mhm.
A lot because a lot of the way you are now happened during childhood. And when you're
Yeah.
able to reflect on that and learn that it wasn't your fault and
Mhm.
that you can't control what the adults in your life do, it's really also a good step in the right direction. It makes
Yeah.
you understand why your triggers are the way they are. Because a lot of my triggers are all because of from my childhood. 'Cause I felt
Mhm.
alone and insecure. So whenever I feel that way and someone has hurt me, it brings me all the way back to when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So it's yeah, learning triggers and also learning why you get triggered.
Yeah.
Which when you go back to your childhood, it really says a lot. And again, it's not even it doesn't have to be anything like crazy like abuse. It doesn't have to
No.
be so upfront. It can be anything like me. Inconsistent caregivers.
Mhm. Yes.
Something as simple what seems simple can do a lot of
You
damage
think it
because
wouldn't it
especially
wouldn't have
over
much of
time.
effect, but it can, and
Yeah,
doesn't mean
for
you had a bad
years.
childhood, doesn't mean you had bad parents, doesn't mean you had, like, this or whatever. It can just be a
Yeah, like
symptom of your environment.
yeah, like I for me, I have never once blamed my parents for me.
Mhm.
They tried to take care of me. They tried to, love me the way they felt, was a good way to give love and
Yeah.
they never could have known.
Mhm.
You
No.
know, I think in the future things will get better.
Yeah.
Mental health research has gone so like has improved so much, mental health awareness improved so much, and I think it will get better.
Yeah.
And back then, like we mental health was like shut out. Like there wasn't a lot of research on trauma and childhood traumas, so
Mhm.
they couldn't have known. You know,
Yeah. These things take time, and
absolutely.
it takes generations. I think a lot of, like, our parents' generations and older, they're maybe starting to understand their traumas. I mean, they probably got a lot of their
Generational
childhood
trauma.
stuff, and they kinda just took it down as being the norm, and I
Yeah,
think it's taken the younger generations to actually go, "Well, hang on a minute, we should talk about this and kind of figure out why this is that way, why this person's anxious, why this is that," like, and kind of put in all of the
yeah.
points together,
Yeah, connecting the dots, and
connecting the
obviously
dots, yeah.
there are a lot of cons like stigma and stuff like
Mhm.
that. But it's like we're still moving in the right direction. Still talking about
Definitely.
it, still being more aware. Like you can already tell things have improved so much. I'm sure
Hmm.
eventually, although it's very hot word, narcissism and NPD. The more we talk about it, the more people will research, and hopefully some will realize, okay, wait, hold on, this doesn't
Hmm.
make sense because there's this, there's that, there's this person, and so the more people that talk about it, yes, a lot of stigma can come with it,
Yeah.
but it's also at some point, since we're talking about it, maybe it'll potentially get better and that there will be more access for people who have NPD or have those traits to
Yeah.
get help.
Yeah, definitely. I really hope so. I think like it's been fascinating talking to you and like hearing about it because it's one of the things I never really. I mean, the first time I heard about narcissism was maybe 6 or 7 years ago. My mum mentioned about it and she used to speak about it because she has a lot of childhood trauma that she's kind of only unpacked over the last few years and kind of things like that. And I think she believes that maybe like her mum, my nan, has narcissistic traits or is a narcissist or along those lines. Um, so she would kind of teach me things. She'd buy books. She'd be reading up on things on what MPD is and all that. So that kind of is where it stemmed. But I know social media can take it in a really bad way and put a bad
Mm,
name on it because, but at the end of the day, it is a disorder like everything else.
yeah.
And
There are good and bad things. Like I am nowhere near perfect. I'm not like no one is also a fully like 100% good person. Everyone has,
no,
poor traits about them. And maybe me, I have more than others due to NPD. But at the end of the day, I'm still a person, we still try and grow. It's
hmm,
like you gotta see the human behind the disorder.
yeah,
People make mistakes. Things happen. I didn't choose to have this. I didn't want like a part of me doesn't want to do these things to people and hurt other people, but it's like
hmm,
it's all defense mechanism. That's what
yeah,
one thing people also gotta realize about narcissism is when a narcissist hurts you, it is for the most part all insecurity. Especially
yeah,
people with NPD, they are hurting you because they are hurt themselves because they are so ashamed of themselves. So it's
hmm,
like rather than trying to get revenge, just know they're doing enough revenge for you. They hate themselves for the most part. That is why they lash out because they are hurt. And
hmm,
so it's like whenever you meet a narcissist, believe someone's a narcissist, just know that they are really hurting deep down, and that doesn't excuse their actions
no,
whatsoever. But they are hurting, and although they make it seem like they aren't, the reason behind a lot of their actions is because how they view themselves.
yeah, I agree. It's a really good point to make. On that note, what's one thing you wish like more people knew about MPD from people with narcissistic
Um,
personality disorder?
that it's a spectrum. That's really one of the major things that it everyone's different. Everyone it manifests different for everybody. And that if you believe someone in your life is a narcissist, try and have some empathy, which I know is hard because they probably don't have a lot of empathy, but it's like trying to understand where they're coming from. It's coming off of they went through like childhood trauma, going through a lot, and just know it has nothing to do with you
Mhm.
and more so the other person. And that's one of a big step for to know less stigma around MBD is to know that that's more about that person and
Yeah,
that you didn't do anything. And it's like just knowing that is also very helps very much so helps people who also suffered from narcissistic abuse.
yeah. No, I like
Knowing
that.
that.
I like that. And to wrap things up here, what is one quote or piece of advice you would give to someone listening? Doesn't have to be about MPD, it could be about anything, it could be about life.
Um always continue to want to learn more. Don't just see a TikTok and believe what it says. Talk to people. If it's someone with a disorder, talk to someone who has that disorder. Talk to people, read more, maybe look at like scientific articles. just social media posts is not the way to go, especially to learn about mental health. If
Yeah.
you really want to take things seriously, make sure you're going to right sources. Make sure I feel like I'm a school teacher. Make sure you're fact checking.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
seriously, a lot of stigma comes from reading a post and believing it that instant.
It's all it
This
takes.
goes this goes with everything. All it takes is reading up a bit more and more understanding. And it's so easy to watch something and get sucked into it and fully believe it. You want to trust people.
Mhm.
100%. But that's one of the things that causes stigma. You read one thing, you believe it, you tell other people believe it, and they kind of change their story around.
Yeah.
Just make sure you know what you're talking about. And if you believe, I mean, these are for people who think they're narcissists out there. If you believe you are one, let's just start off by not telling everyone on the internet. That's one of the big things. Honestly, it sounds silly, but it's like you think you have something and you go on the internet professionally not diagnosed
Mhm.
and saying all these things when you could potentially not have it or something else. Go to therapy for the symptoms you may have. And if it happens so you have NPD or any other personality disorder, and you can get help more
Mhm.
specific to that. And then you can let people know, spread knowledge, spread awareness.
Mhm. That's yeah. Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. Like, if you feel like you have any traits of anything, it is go to therapy, see a professional, and take it from there, just a step at a time, and
Absolutely.
don't just blast it on social media saying, "I have this, I have that." Like,
Yeah. And it's okay to think you have something
mm,
100%. But what's not okay is, just saying you do have it when you're not 100% sure. I
mhm,
mean, everyone starts at some point thinking they have something. Like me, I thought I had NPD, but I didn't go around saying on the internet until I was fully diagnosed.
yeah. Yeah, because I think a lot of the time people that do that as well, they don't have the full information either. They
Yeah.
maybe haven't done the research. Like you said, they haven't fact checked.
I'm still learning about NPD and narcissism every day. There is still
Yeah.
so much I don't know. I recently started reading a book, don't know what it's called, and there is still so much I didn't know that I had no
Yeah.
idea. It's truly shocking, and I have NPD, and it's just it's crazy.
We never stop learning.
No,
We
never.
never stop learning. Oh, Kiara, thank you so much. There's been such an incredible conversation. I feel like I've learned so, so much. And I
Yeah, I really
really,
appreciate you having me. Seriously, I've listened to some of your other podcasts, and it's truly it's very, very great what you're doing.
thank you, mate. I really appreciate that. And yeah, I'd love to have you on again sometime because I feel like we could talk forever.
Oh, we probably could. I
Yeah.
feel like we could have kept this going.
Yeah, we really could
Absolutely.
have. Well, I know it's like 3 in the morning for you now. I'm like, it's
Yeah.
like you gotta go to bed,
Like,
mate.
man, it's been this long?
Yeah, yeah, we've gone an hour and 40.
Oof.
Yeah,
Man, yeah, I
yeah,
would I would love, if you ever need someone to, fill up some time, some space,
for
hey,
sure.
I'm around.
I appreciate that. Kiara, thank you so much.
No worries. Take
Take
care.
care, mate. Bye, everybody.